Alrighty, Emily, let's hear what you
Okay.
get.
Oh goodness. Okay. I feel like I should start with it. Howdy, y'all. Just because a lot of y'all are ags, and I think that's neat. But okay, I guess I'll just start now. So, 18 out of 1,000 women, according to a survey by Gertrude Institute in 2019, had an abortion. And so in 2000, that was statistics from 2010, the last census, that totaled to 1,102,670 abortions just in that year. And so abortion has taken more lives than that of the most horrendous wars, and when properly understood and defined, we can stop infanticide in America, and then we can use our voice for those that do not have a voice to speak out for their lives, and then also use our voting rights, and then be able to serve in our communities to promote the pro-life movement. Herschel Volk, a professor of philosophy at University of Buffalo, concludes, if abortion, then infanticide. And that is a very bold statement, of which I'll follow his explanation. One cannot distinguish the fetus from the infant in terms of a morally significant intrinsic property, nor are they morally discernible in terms of standing in different relationships to others. In this, he is saying that the baby that is within the womb and the baby that is outside of the womb are very much the same, especially regarding their morality, and it's literally just the difference of being inside of a womb or outside of a womb. In America, we are currently still killing these innocent babies through abortion. And there have been recent headline breakings as a heartbreak bill, and something just passed in Alabama about that after whenever the heartbeat is heard, then people would not be able to have abortions. And so the pro-life movement is gaining traction in America, but it still needs a lot of help. It broke my heart while I was researching this because I realized how desensitized a lot of not only the physicians, but people that were adamant for pro-choice are. Philip J. Steer, in an international journal of OBGYN, calls abortion the termination of pregnancy. This definition, he admits, is based off of a lot of euphemisms around abortion that he even will show in his article, that they do so in order to allow women to not feel shame whenever they're getting an abortion. But coupled with a dictionary.com reference, something that anybody could look up, pregnant or pregnancy is that of having a child or being with other offspring developing in the body with child or young. These two definitions coupled together in a use of logic then shows that abortion is a termination of having a child. Along with other articles that I read, they would refer to abortion as removing contents of the uterus, or a common one that we hear in our generation of just fetuses. And it's words like these that desensitize us to what is actually occurring whenever women have an abortion. And those are from articles like In the World of Health, which was written in 2000. It was the very same physician who would be able to have an ultrasound of a baby, and that same mother would go home and she would have a party celebrating her child's upcoming arrival and talk to her friend and show them the ultrasound pictures. It would be different, could be different due to personal circumstances of a very same mother who did not want the child or there was something wrong with the child. And that's something I've experienced with my own niece, as they thought she had something wrong with her and very blatantly told us that we could have an abortion if we wanted. But there's a lack of information and tainted agenda in the United States still about what abortion is and how it affects not only those who have had abortions, but those who have been aborted, and also the moral wrongness of it. There are born alive abortion survivors, a title given by the U.S. Senator to these abortion survivors, that along with 30,000 physicians, wrote to the U.S. Senator and stood before him later to say that there are 3 indisputable facts regarding abortion. The first one is it is an indisputable scientific fact that a distinct living human being exists in the womb of a pregnant woman. The second fact is abortion is not healthcare, much less an essential part of women's healthcare, and abortions in the third trimester are not done to save a woman's life. And then their third one, and all of these are with the 30,000 physicians' backings, of which have many credibility. No matter the circumstances of their birth, infants who are born alive must be given appropriate medical care. And then, so because everything is euphemized, a lot of people don't even realize that there are people that survive abortions, and there's so many of them. And I would hope that those three facts that they presented to not only Congress, but would have touched y'all's heart. In Induced Abortions, an article of the College of Pediatricians in August of 2016, they listed more effects that abortion can have, and these are to people that have had abortions: increased mortality from suicide and other violence, increased risk of breast cancer and substance abuse, and also a higher risk of morbidity and mortality for the subsequent children that they would have after they had abortions. So what I would trying to persuade y'all today to do is to go out and inform others, not only what you've learned in the speech, but also things that you might have heard of what abortion is, and to be able to use that voice that you have, not anywhere that you go, but also our voice that we have as Americans to vote, and then to take action. And y'all might be sitting there thinking, well, we're just college kids, or I can't adopt all these kids. But as college kids, we have a voice on campuses where so many people can be affected. We can give our time in volunteering, or even just giving donations towards mothers that need help. I've come in contact with organizations such as the Stork Bus that have free ultrasounds on wheels that they'll go to abortion centers and they'll have outside of their lines. And then I've also been with the Joy House that has given homes long-term care to women that are in crisis pregnancies. We could have stopped those 1 million abortions that were in 2010 with just the use of our voice. And there's a very telling quote by Gary Haugen that said, when our grandkids ask us where we were when the voiceless and the vulnerable in our era needed leaders of compassion and purpose. I hope we can say that we showed up, and that we showed up on time. And he was a activist against slavery, and so was Martin Luther King. And just as back in their era, there was people that were treated unequal and inequality just because of their skin color, nowadays there are babies that just because of their size are being treated unequal. And as Martin Luther King said, the time is now to do the right thing. And so I hope that at the end of the speech that y'all are brought and moved to join me in the pro-life movement. And so, does anybody have any questions?
Okay, so I have a question. So if we all were to be pro-life, and even if mothers don't want their babies after they have them and they put them up for adoption, how could we solve the problem of the overcrowding in adoption centers?
Okay, that is a very fair question, and it breaks my heart that we live in America, because it's an obnoxious amount of money that you have to spend to be able to adopt a child. And the numbers show that there are so many families that want to be able to adopt. And so I would say that is further like using our voice, like, hey, why can abortions be like, they're like within $100, $300, but adoptions are anywhere from $3,000 to I've known people that spend like $10,000 or more. And so that's something where we can use our voice, because it shouldn't be like that. Like if I want to be able to adopt someone, that's like ridiculous. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
I have one question. So, under what circumstances do you think an abortion is okay?
I actually don't think there is. And so there's a little slight tweak of that. So abortion, like you said, the termination of pregnancy. The weird thing is scientifically speaking, that includes like miscarriages. So I would have to say, like, obviously a miscarriage is allowed. Like no one wants to have a miscarriage. Like that just happens due to like problems with the pregnancy. And so I would honestly say that there should never, I mean, if you're going to stand and say that abortion is taking away a child's life, then why should there ever be a reason where it's okay to take away a child's life?
So in a scenario, something like the physician tells you like you're not going to be able to survive this pregnancy, what do you do in that stance?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so in the 3 facts that the people that have survived abortions that they presented to the U.S. Congress, and granted that was with 30,000 backings of physicians from all across the world, they stated that is a scientific fact that a mother does not ever have to have an abortion. We live in a day of technology where we can early detect signs, and people and the doctors can go in and give surgeries to the babies while they're in the womb. And also, especially after that 20-week period when most abortions occur, they can always give the mother a C-section. So it's never like the mother has to live or die. And those are very, very rare chances. And that, I would say, would definitely be up to the mother. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have my question. Mine is, do you agree with all of the statistics you stated? Because I know sometimes, especially like abortion, I go to college and talk about abortion all the time. And some people will kind of like say it's a fact, but then later be like, oh, well, I didn't really think that. I just like said it for my paper or whatever. So do you agree with like all of the facts and information that you found?
The facts and information that's being shared.
Right. So like all like the evidence that you found for like credibility and stuff. So like the numbers and just like the actual answers and stuff.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. So it was really hard. It was really hard writing the speech because there was so many people that was on the pro-choice side, and there's so few people on the pro-life side, especially like sadly to say in the like scholarly aspect of the world. And so the neat thing about it is that numbers don't lie. And so in that statistic I found, about 18 out of 1,000 women, people that are pro-choice would be like, oh, that's a really small number. Like more women should have the right. But for me as a pro-life, I'm like, that's a big number. 18 out of 1,000 people chose to abort their baby. Like to me, that breaks my heart because that's like 18 more children we could have had. And who knows, like if they were like the next Martin Luther King Jr. or any of us.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I would say numbers don't lie, but definitely always going back to see like, do they have an agenda behind it, or are they like do they match up with the pro-life and the pro-choice? Because when you have both sides agreeing on a number, then you're like, okay, then now you just have to see which agenda it's pushing. So, any more questions? Y'all have such a lovely crowd. Okay, well, thank you. I can't wait to hear y'all's.
Okay, cool. Do y'all mind if I go next?
Yeah, for sure.
That's fine.
Okay. All right. I was sitting down, but I'm gonna get up so you guys can.
Yeah, I'm gonna sit down now. I feel like I've done my part.
Okay. Everybody ready? Okay, howdy. So we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we'll have some Q&A at the end there. So drug-resistant infections will kill an extra 10 million people a year worldwide, more than currently die from cancer by 2050 unless action is taken. This is according to an article by BBC titled Superbugs to Kill More Than Cancer by 2050, which I accessed yesterday, July 8th, 2019 on their website. Everyone has taken an antibiotic some point in their life, but most people are unaware of the dangers this superweapon can propel. As a tutor for microbiology, I continually stress the problems associated with antibiotic resistance and how it has changed over the years. Antimicrobial resistance is changing the future of medicine, and understanding its many facets is important to altering its current course. Today, I will discuss the problem with antibiotic-resistant strains, how antibiotic resistance is caused through overuse and misuse, and what solutions can be done to stop the spread of antibiotic resistance. So first, let's discuss the problem with antibiotic-resistant strains. According to a report published by the World Health Organization in 2018 titled Antibiotic Resistance, which I accessed yesterday on their website, states that new resistance mechanisms are emerging and spreading globally, threatening our ability to treat common infectious diseases. There is a growing list of infections like pneumonia, tuberculosis, and gonorrhea that have become more difficult and sometimes impossible to treat because antibiotics have become less effective. Can you imagine how awful it would be if you contracted antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea? I can assure you that you would not be going on a dinner date anytime soon. Secondly, this problem can especially be seen here in the United States. And according to an article published by the CDC in 2018, which I accessed yesterday on their website, states that each year in the US, at least 2 million people are infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and at least 23,000 people die as a result. How would you feel if your loved one died from a super infection? Avoiding antibiotic-resistant infections is almost entirely impossible, and this is especially true for people with chronic illnesses. The CDC states that if antibiotics lose their effectiveness, then we lose the ability to treat infections and control public health threats. In the next 30 years, we could see common colds become not only an annoyance, but deadly. So how does antibiotic resistance occur? Many studies and articles have been published that have analyzed the cause of antibiotic resistance and how it has spread over the years. According to an article published in 2014 by the National Institutes of Health, which I accessed yesterday, states that the use of antibiotics in agriculture is routinely described as a major contributor to the clinical problem of resistant disease in human medicine. As more research has continued, we have noticed that humans are exposed to resistant pathogens and bacteria through direct consumption of animal products and contact with these animals. Antibiotic use is very prominent in many developed countries to keep animals kept in captivity from getting sick and to promote their growth. However, over time, these bacteria are exposed to low doses of a certain drug and begin to develop resistance that is then consumed by the consumer unknowingly. Secondly, antibiotics are overprescribed and misprescribed by healthcare workers in many countries. According to an article titled Overuse and Overprescribing of Antibiotics, published by the Centers of Infectious Disease and Research Policy, at least 30 outpatients of antibiotic prescriptions, at least 30% of outpatient antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. Most are inappropriate use of antibiotics, and this occurs when prescriptions are given for like viral respiratory infections, such as viral bronchitis, otitis, and sinusitis. Antibiotics only work against living bacteria, and as such, they are ineffective against viruses because they are acellular and not live. According to an article published in 2018 by the Mayo Clinic, this article states that antibiotic overuse and antibiotic overprescribing in outpatient care can be attributed to clinicians prescribing antibiotics before results confirm a bacterial infection. And also, this is in part because patients are taking antibiotics that are left over from a previous prescription. Can you imagine taking a prescription of a drug that a healthcare provider is giving you on a guess, or taking an antibiotic that is old and less effective? It wouldn't work. So now that you know what antibiotic resistance is and how it occurs, what can we as consumers do about it? There are many ways that we can help combat antibiotic resistance and certain behaviors that we can do to stop this problem. Firstly, being educated on the problem at hand is an absolute necessity and is something the healthcare industry and the government needs to be pushing towards. If the general public is unaware of the problem at hand, how can they possibly solve this problem? Secondly, we can have public letters of commitment that are signed by physicians and displayed in exam rooms. These commitments would include a 20% decrease in the amount of antibiotic prescriptions. According to an article published in 2014 by the American Society for Microbiology, states that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, can require manufacturers of antibiotics for agricultural use to generate data on the public health and the environmental consequences of this use and can set limits on the antibiotics used based on this data. This would allow for government agencies to have a better understanding of antibiotic use in agriculture, and more accurate data regarding this can help track and report it. Lastly, tracking and reporting must be enforced and overhauled to better understand prescribing patterns. This would also include written justification for prescribing an antibiotic instead of just handing them out like candy. As you can see, antibiotic resistance is numerous faces. It presents the problem and it has many moving parts. Now that you know more about this problem and the different aspects of it, hopefully you can take the knowledge that you've learned and spread it to others. We've discussed the problem with antibiotic-resistant strains, how this problem is caused, and the many solutions that can be used. Antibiotic resistance is changing the future of medicine, and understanding the problems it causes will help the public realize why we must stop being so irresponsible with them. As our understanding of the world becomes more detailed, I have no doubt that our pursuance of science will help us turn the tide of this problem. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, you go.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Okay, so ironically, this kind of has to do with the question that she asked me. So I talked to a friend about this who is like an ag major, and she was saying that, well, like if you take away like the antibiotics, like what you're talking about how like it's enclosed spaces, and that's why they use it on the animals. So it's talking about like the overpopulation of the earth, which I don't really agree with, but it's a whole other tangent. So how would you like describe a solution for that whenever people are like, oh, well, then we won't have enough food for the amount of people that we have?
Definitely. And, you know, they talk about it. And if we actually all stopped eating meat, that would just solve a lot of the problem right there, because it takes a lot more energy and just land to feed and farm animals. You know what I'm saying? And if you had all that land just for growing like fruits and vegetables and things, you wouldn't need antibiotics whatsoever, right? We should be using antibiotics in situations where we have like a flesh-eating bacteria where we absolutely need it, and not just for a simple like cough or simple infection, right? And I definitely understand where your friend is coming from when she says that, because yeah, and definitely in closed spaces, right? You've got a lot of bacteria, you have a lot of animals on top of each other. It's just dirty and gross, right? So they're giving them these antibiotics preemptively to keep them from getting sick, because who wants to lose out on profits, right? And as a society, when we demand a cheeseburger be $1, we inadvertently, right, are helping that, and continuing to play into that scenario where we're keeping cows and calves and chickens and pork all in just stuffed spaces, right? So I think a solution would be switching over to an all plant-based diet, and that would just completely eliminate the problem of antibiotic use moving through animals into us. And now we're picking up that bacteria that's got that resistance to penicillin, to cephalosporins and tetracyclines, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely.
Good.
Okay, so when you look at it from an agriculture point of view, if we were to eliminate the use of antibiotics, like giving them to animals, what would you propose we do instead to keep the animals healthy when they're sick?
So yeah, definitely don't get me wrong. There's those instances where you have a sick animal and they do need to be treated, right? Because that's just inhumane to just let that animal sit there and suffer and die, right? That's why we have veterinarian care. One thing though is that with the use of antibiotics in these situations, the animals are all crowded on top of each other, right? So all of them are getting antibiotics no matter what, whether they are or aren't sick. And this is preemptively to keep them from getting sick. And if we stopped confining them in these tight, small spaces and on top of each other, and let them actually roam free and be that free range chicken and be that free range cow that we used to have, you know, in the 1700s, 1400s, right? We wouldn't have an issue. We could still do that, I think, and we could just use those antibiotics and treat the individual animals that are sick, and not the whole, right? You don't cut down the whole apple tree because one apple is sour, right? You pluck the one apple. And the same thing goes for using antibiotics with animals. You treat the one sick animal, but you don't have to do a shotgun therapy against the whole entire herd. Does that answer your question?
And then mine was kind of from something you said in the middle, just kind of talking about how some doctors and physicians and stuff are just kind of like reckless with like just kind of like giving them out to whomever, whenever, animals, people, whatever. Why do you think that is? Some doctors, physicians, kind of like reckless with that, do you think?
So my friend is actually in nursing school right now, and she talked to me about this because I love having educated conversations with people. And she told me that a lot of what it is I'm not trying to say laziness, but you have to actually swab first and get the bacteria, and then you have to plate it and let it grow, and then you can do sensitivity tests against different antibiotics. Well, that takes about a day or two. And so most people, for in the doctor's eyes, they're not going to come back 2 days later to come pick up their antibiotic. They want you to just give them something right then and there, right? They want to feel better immediately. They don't want to have to be coming back 2 days later and still be fighting off a bacterial infection. Even if it might not even be a bacterial infection, right? The doctor doesn't know just by looking at you whether or not it's a viral infection or a bacterial infection. And the only way he would know is if he swabbed it, grew it on a plate in the lab, which they do. Hospitals have that. and grew it on a plate and then did antibiotic testing against it, but he wouldn't know right then and there if it's a viral or bacterial infection. And so you're on his back saying, oh, I want to feel better. Give me something, because that's the society we live in, right? We want immediate gratitude and justification. We want an antibiotic right then and there. We want to feel better. And so a lot of doctors are pressured, and the same thing with nurses, to immediately just give you something so that way you won't be pressuring them and they can get them off your back. And don't get me wrong, that's awful. That's really not how healthcare should be. But patients aren't educated enough to understand this, and they want right here, right then, right now. They want to feel better immediately, and they think that a pill is going to do that, even though they might not understand the pharmacokinetics behind it and understand that a virus is different from a bacteria. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Alrighty, well, hopefully y'all learned something about antibiotic resistance, and don't get antibiotic resistant gonorrhea. It's awful.
Okay, I'll go next. If I told you that many of the products, medications that you use today were developed through animal experimentation. As humans, we encounter and use animals every day. This may be through the food we eat, pets we love on, or medications we use daily derived from animal experimentation. As a biomedical science student and lover of animals, I'm particularly interested in the topic of animal experimentation. Animal experimentation is a controversial topic due to the question of ethics, but is an extremely important and useful way to learn and make new medical discoveries. Today I will discuss the problems with animal experimentation, why it's used, and how it benefits society. First, I will discuss the issue or reason why people do not support animal experimentation. The ethical debate over animal experimentation has been ongoing for more than 200 years. Animal experimentation takes place in two ways: vivisection and dissection. In 2007, World Health published the definition of vivisection, and vivisection is defined as the practice of performing operations on live animals for the purpose of experimentation or scientific research. On the other hand, dissection has the same procedure and purpose, but differs in the fact that it's done on deceased animals. Vivisection is the type of experimentation that most people claim as animal cruelty and are against. The animal rights movement and activists are the primary threat to animal experimentation. In September 1991, the Western Journal of Medicine journalist Norman P. Garvey authored the article Animal Rights and Animal Experimentation: Implications for Physicians, in which she states that the roots of the current animal rights movement can be traced back to the 19th century England, when people began to unite to form the anti-vivisection campaign. This movement protests against cruelty to animals and supports the equal treatment of humans and animals. In response to the unhappy animal rights activists, the Animal Welfare Act of 1966 was created. The 2011 document, Animal Testing, authored by Animal Sciences, informs us that this act was designed to protect animals that might be test subjects by requiring their proper care, and it sets forth a list of guidelines researchers to comply with. Here it is important to point out the difference between animal welfare activists and animal rights activists. Animal welfare activists support the well-being or humane treatment of the animals, while on the other hand, animal rights activists want to basically make human and animal rights equal. So it's kind of crazy, just like how humans own property, I think animals should have the right to own their own property. Those who do not support animal experimentation fail to realize the number of regulations that have been put into place to protect animals. The Opposing Viewpoints online collection 2019 posted an article titled Animal Experimentation, where they list out a few of the many regulations put upon animal experimentation, such as how they are allowed to obtain and raise the animals. The animals are obtained through licensed USDA dealers and are raised in a closed, regulated environment. Now that you're familiar with the controversy over animal experimentation, you're probably wondering why it's used. Experimenting on animals provides a massive learning opportunity. Dating back to ancient times and continuing to modern times, The dissection of living animals has occurred for the purpose of learning more about how the body functions. Galen, a scientist identified in the World of Health 2007 vivisection article, conducted numerous animal experiments using apes to investigate animal physiology. For example, Galen would cut nerves to determine which nerves were associated with paralysis in different parts of the body. In the 17th century, English physician William Harvey conducted famous animal experiments that demonstrated how the blood circulates through the body. As the science of medicine grew, so did the use of vivisection. In the mid-19th century, French chemist and microbiologist Louis Pasteur isolated the microbe that causes anthrax and then developed a vaccine against the deadly disease through his studies on rabbits and guinea pigs. Following the footsteps of Pasteur, many other scientists began experimenting with animals to develop vaccines and antibiotics. The vein of research continues into the 21st century in the study of diseases such as AIDS, malaria, and other infectious diseases. Vivisection has also been of vital importance in many other areas, including advances in open heart surgery, treatments for kidney failure, and the development of drugs and transplantation. Keen insights and life-saving advances in medicine gained through vivisection have propelled animal experimentation to the forefront of modern scientific research. In schools today, dissections are used in some science courses to teach students about human or animal anatomy. First things first, animals are not killed for dissection purposes. These animals died in the stage of life inside the womb due to either illness or some unknown reason. Ask yourself, if the animal is already deceased for a reason beyond our control, why not use that animal to teach and inspire others? You can learn so much about the human body through animal dissection and make new discoveries as to how these animals die. So given that the use of animal experimentation is a learning opportunity, how does it benefit society? Animal experimentation has brought an endless series of biomedical breakthroughs. John Erickson's magazine article titled The Price of Killing Off Animal Testing from Newsweek 2014 discusses the major losses society would experience if animal experimentation were ended. Frankie Troll, a science advocate, president of the Foundation for Biomedical Research, says an immediate end to animal research in the U.S. would be a death sentence for millions of people around the world. She told Newsweek, if you've ever taken antibiotics, had a vaccine, a chemotherapy, an MRI, a blood transfusion, dialysis, an organ transplant, bypass surgery, joint replacement, you've been the beneficiary of research that started with lab animals. Another alarming consequence of a prohibition would be the blow to research on neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. All relevant research for these diseases requires living systems. Take note that dementia rates are expected to triple by 2050. I hope you have learned something about why animal experimentation is ethical and very important. I've talked about the controversy with animal experimentation, why it's used, and how it benefits society. Although the ethical debate on animal experimentation is ongoing, we can try to teach the uninformed and advocate for the importance of this research. If there's one thing that you take away from this message, remember that animals are the future. They fuel our population and create scientific advancements that keep us healthy. All right, so do y'all have any questions?
I do. So, what is your stance on PETA and SeaWorld? And do you favor one over the other, or do you feel that they both better? Do you feel like they both help animals?
So, as an agriculturalist, I actually don't support PETA's views, and I don't support SeaWorld either because I feel that the animals are in captivity and they're not really using them for scientific study. They're using them more as entertainment to gain income. But the reason why I disagree with PETA is because they don't condone any animal research. They think all of it is inhumane and cruel. And the people that support PETA are actually the animal rights activists. So they want equal treatment of humans and animals. And I just think at some point there's a line you have to draw where obviously animals are less than humans like we are their owners, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't value their life.
I agree. Okay, definitely.
Oh, sorry, Emily, I can't hear you.
Oh, hold on. Well, I had muted some.
Okay, now I can hear.
Okay. So going along with the SeaWorld, what do you think about animals being used for like show rights, like in movies and stuff like that?
I feel like nowadays the movies that are made over animals, they're either like the new Lion King that's coming out, it's all done on a computer, it's not really real. Or most movies that are promoted by Disney, they just record animals in their natural environment. So I definitely support that. But if there's a movie over like a live real circus, I wouldn't support that because those animals are abused to be able to do the things that they can do.
Yeah.
Hold on, Stephanie. I had like muted you earlier because it was like making like a ringing sound. I think you might have to like unmute yourself. I don't. There you go.
Is it working?
Okay, yeah, it's working. It's just kind of hard to hear.
No, you're fine. So my question is kind of on like the welfare versus rights. Because obviously, kind of like you said, like for humans, like animals, were their owners and stuff. If someone who was an animal rights activist came up to you, how would you kind of like persuade them more to be kind of like more on the welfare side, if that makes sense?
That's a good question. I think I would probably discuss more. I think it would appeal to them that we, as a welfarist, we support like human treatment of animals. So I feel like they would agree with that. But maybe convincing them that animals, they are smart, they do have brains, but they don't have the same decision-making skills and they can't speak like humans do.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they shouldn't exactly have the same exact rights that we do because they just aren't able to.
Right.
I have one more question. So is that like relating to consciousness? Like animals aren't at the same level of consciousness as we are? Because I think is it some like monkeys or gorillas or do have some rights, right? Is that what that is? I don't.
Yeah, like I definitely think that especially primates, they're very similar to us and you know, they can think and they can make decisions, but they still can't speak for themselves. So it's kind of like what I was saying about the ownership of property. It's kind of crazy to think of an animal like owning its own property.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
All right.
This is gonna sound religious, but like, because obviously, like, we would never want to say like just because someone can't speak, like they don't have like a right. So then, would you just say like, I guess with the consciousness, but the stark difference would be that of the soul, of like having that love for like poetry, art, music, like that is the different part of humanity.
Yeah, I don't think it's that they shouldn't have rights at all because they can't speak. Like, they definitely do have rights in a sense because there's regulations put on experimenting with them and there's rules, especially the Welfare Act highlights that they have to be treated humanely. So it's not disrespecting. Any more questions? Okay.
Okay. Apologies. Yeah. Imagine you're about to start the best year of your life. Everything is just set into place. You have an amazing group of friends, great grades, your dreams are finally setting into reality. You just feel like you're at the top of the world and like nothing can bring you down. Then what seems to feel like a regular day, you find out that you're about to have to fight for your life because you've been diagnosed with this type of disease such as cancer. Now, some of us cannot even really imagine or fathom this happening to us, but unfortunately, this is reality for a lot of people, including a friend of mine named Caroline. She's been diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, a rare form of bone cancer, and there are thousands of people who help her, including myself. And for a long time, I struggled with what I can physically do to help her. And then I finally realized that I could do something that's actually pretty simple, which was just donating blood. I've donated blood many times before, especially in high school, but it was honestly just to kind of skip class and get the free t-shirt and snacks. After knowing someone personally who could receive blood donations, it really began to strike my interest into the topic. Of cancer, a trauma, any chronic disease, blood donation helps a lot more than we think, and it is so worth it. Today, I'll talk about why donating blood is so important, the blood donation process, and donating healthy. First, I will begin explaining why donating blood is so important. In the article "How to Get the Gift of Blood" by Caroline Clark, she says 97% of people in the United States will need blood at some point in their life, and it is up to people like you and I who would have to decide if they will receive that blood. That article was written in 2009. With that being said, Clark really puts into perspective about how nearly everyone in this country alone will have to receive a blood donation at some point. We may not need it today or tomorrow or anytime soon, but somewhere down the line, it's very possible that we will be in need of getting blood. And I know personally, I don't want to be at the end of my life in the hospital one day and a nurse telling me they don't have blood. Another article titled "History of Blood Transfusions" by Danielle Ava really goes into explaining how blood transfusions first began and just how they've evolved over time into now. Ayala makes a real and honest statement. Blood donation is one of the single most important contributions a person can make in saving the lives of others. Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood, and every pint of blood can save several lives. The more donated blood, the more lives saved. That was written back in 2014. This segment alone highlights how there's always someone whom we can help or not even realize. After reading that statement, that convicted me just personally know that I am a reasonably healthy girl and I don't donate as often as I should in order to help the lives of others. The requirements are fairly simple and easy to follow. A brochure at the Gulf Coast Regional Blood Center and you simply just have to be 17 years of age and weigh at least 110 pounds. Next is the process of how we donate blood. The process is also fairly easy, and on givingblood.org, which I accessed yesterday, it gets into depth about the blood donation process step by step. Before you walk into the chair and get your blood physically drawn, you must understand the importance of donating blood and see if blood is eligible even for donation. The first step is simply showing the photo ID. You'll begin filling out the registration form. Next, you will do a pre-donation screening. As the website says, the health exam includes a finger prick, taking a drop of blood, and testing it to see if the iron level is sufficient for you to donate. Along with this physical test you have to take, you simply just answer a few questions that are just easy yes or no. It's important that you answer these questions completely and 100% honestly, because any question they're asking has to do with whether you're eligible for donating. The next step is the actual donation portion. If you're eligible, you'll find your way to the bathroom to donate 1 unit of blood, which is usually about 1 cent. They cleanse the area where your vein is in your arm, and they also get a needle that is sterilized, so it's completely clean and not for use at all. The Boston Magazine describes the actual donation as just a piece that only lasts seconds and puts in comparison to the lives you're helping save. That article was also written back in 2014 as well. This process only takes around 6 to 10 minutes, and the bandage is wrapped around your arm after they put it up. The hard part is over. Now it's time to just relax and rest. The final step is to simply relax in the building for about 15 minutes before you leave, just to make sure you're hydrated and you're replenished and everything. You munch on some snacks and hydrate, and then you're off for the rest of your day. Now, after learning all of that, don't you just want to get into blood right? There are tons of benefits of donating healthy blood. After donating time after time, I personally know a whole bunch of benefits of donating blood. It's absolutely free. Free snacks, free t-shirts, in certain places, such as Gulf Coast Regional Blood Center, let you get points after a certain amount of times you donate, and then later you get to recoup those points just to keep on little trinkets here. It's a fun, free experience. Did I literally everything about the process is 100% free. Donating blood also gives you benefits, not just the donor itself. In an article titled "Donation of Blood Associated with Reduced Risk of Myocardial Infarction" by the Johns Hopkins University School of Hygiene and Public Health, they said those who donate blood are 88% less likely to suffer from heart attacks, and that was written back in 1998. Along with a lower chance of a heart attack, there are other benefits from donating, such as you get to burn calories, maintain good health, and even lower the risk of cancer for yourself. Although getting free things is fun, perks for yourself and all, that's not the main concern as why you should donate blood. Yes, you're doing a good deed and you can pat yourself on the back, but that's not why we should be looking at it or how we should be looking at the issue. You get to help save someone. In fact, each time you donate, you get to help save up to at least 3 lives. Although 9.999 times out of 10 you can't choose specifically who the blood goes to, you're still helping someone whether you know them or not, which is still just an awesome part of the whole experience. As cliche as it sounds, your blood donation could truly help someone's life. I hope you've learned a lot about donating blood and just the huge effect that it makes and it can have on someone's life. I discussed why donating is so important. Blood donation exists and benefits of donating healthy blood. Although it may seem like a difficult and sometimes even scary thing to do, donating blood is quick and easy and gives a lot of benefits to the recipient, which makes it so worthwhile. A nurse once told me this when I was donating blood, and it's just been in my brain ever since. She said, I can't discover a cure for cancer, but I can help someone alive while they're waiting for a cure. I hope you keep this in mind the next time you even consider donating. I have any questions?
I have a question. Okay, so what are some ways that people that can't give or like can't give blood? Because like I'm anemic, so it's like what are some ways that I could support the cause?
Right. So I know for sure, as cliche as it sounds, GoFundMe, and there's just like a bunch of pages you can do. And even if you don't physically like want to give up money, because I know some people just like financially can't support, so you have like a bunch or whatever. Honestly, just a good way is just your time. Like just volunteering at a blood center, or just even like going to the hospital and just kind of like, I know like random acts of kindness, like giving someone like flowers, or just like writing them like a little note. Just honestly like helps a little bit because some of these patients are just in hospital for like weeks at a time or months at a time. Um, so even if you can't physically do it, you can still physically go and help and do something if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good.
So I have a question. So I know there's like a shortage all the time of like blood. I personally cannot give blood. I have sold my plasma before. Do you think that if the blood I don't want to say like blood corporation, but do you think if they offered money like they do for your plasma, because with your plasma they're taking that and they're making it into medicine and they give you money for that. Do you think that they should do the same thing for blood donations and buy your blood? So that way they would have more people donating because they have a larger incentive to.
Right. I feel like in a way, yes, it would help, but in a way also no, just because like I know, like one of the questions in the screening is they kind of like ask if you ever sold anything or like physically. I know it sounds kind of weird, but if you ever like physically sold something like blood or like whatever, if you ever sold something, then like you can't donate. So I don't know if maybe they would be like controversial about we can't necessarily buy your blood just because that like looks bad or I don't even know if like it might be like, illegal or something. I definitely like agree with like, what you're saying. I think that could be like a huge incentive and it could definitely help a lot. I feel like that they just kind of have to like figure out the right way to kind of like buy your blood if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Did that answer the question? I know it's kind of like
I was just curious what your thoughts are around that.
Okay, so I'm wondering, knowing that if you donate blood, you could potentially save people, if that number was increased or decreased, like how do you think that would affect the number of people that donate blood?
Could you say that last one again? It kind of cut out a little bit.
So knowing that if you donate blood, you're saving 3 people, how do you think that number increasing or decreasing would affect the rate of like people donating blood?
Right. I think it's just kind of like one of the main things like with donating, like as you already know, like some people like literally like not donate blood, just because like they're anemic or they just like can't for some other reason. Um, so, but if you're like reasonably healthy, like it doesn't have to like you can't be like over this weight or whatever. But it just kind of there's just a bunch of benefits that makes sense. Like there are benefits that I didn't have were too much. So I lost my train of thought. It just kind of um, there's a bunch of other health benefits that help you if you're already reasonably healthy and can donate blood. But if you're then I don't know necessarily if it would help you feel better and in like a health stance of sense. Um, I don't know. Does that really answer it, or is it?
Yeah.
And this isn't really like a question, it's more of just like a statement. But I think it's in Norway or Sweden. So when you go to donate blood, you sign up with your phone number. And whenever your blood is actually used to save somebody, they actually text you saying like, oh, your blood like saved somebody today. I mean, obviously they can't give you like the personal information, but they said they have higher like retention rates for people coming back and continuing to donate and stuff. And in America, we're slow to everything. And I think that would be something interesting that would be fun and interactive to know, like, oh, because I feel like a lot of times when we do good things, we don't really ever hear back from anything. And I feel like that would definitely help jump the blood donation. And oh my gosh, like mine saved somebody today. Like I got this text message, and you know what I mean? I'm gonna go back and donate again.
Like personally knowing.
Yeah.
Like I donate my hair a bunch, like cancer patients and stuff, and they send like a letter in the mail, not like a personal letter, but just kind of like your hair today was made into a wig for a cancer patient. And so I've like definitely thought about, oh, like why don't we do that for like I donate blood or like you volunteer here or there or whatever. But yeah, I have like 100%. I think that would definitely be just something like super impactful and just like beneficial to.
I guess that's it. And well, it's good class with y'all, and it was interesting. Everybody watching other people's presentations and stuff. And I know there's two Aggies here, so maybe I'll see you guys on campus sometime.
Yeah.
Other than that, I guess that's it. It's the end of our class.
I know.
Alrighty. Well, I'm gonna like hit stop recording now. So.